The silence in the St. Jude Grand Chapel was heavy. It wasn't the respectful, holy silence you expect at a wedding. It was the kind of silence that happens right after a car crash. The kind where the dust is still settling and everyone is too shocked to scream. I stood at the altar, my white silk veil pushed back. My hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me the most. I felt cold, methodical. I looked at Kenji, my husband-to-be, the man I'd spent 5 years building a life with. His face was the color of spoiled milk. He was staring at the massive 15-foot LED screen behind the officiant. Behind us, my younger sister, May, was slumped in the front pew. She was wearing her maid of honor dress, a soft champagne pink that I had paid for. She looked like a broken doll. Her mascara was running in thick, black rivers down her cheeks. On the screen, there was no tribute to our love. There were no childhood photos or clips of us laughing in the park. Instead, there was a high-definition still from my living room Nest Cam. It was time-stamped 3 weeks ago, 2:14 a.m., the night I told Kenji I had to stay late at the office to finish the quarterly audit. In the video, Kenji and May weren't just talking. They were on my sofa, my hand-stitched Italian leather sofa that cost me 3 months' salary. They looked comfortable. They looked like a couple. And then the slide changed. The next image was a spreadsheet, a bank statement from our joint savings account, the account that was supposed to be our house fund. The balance was nearly zero. A red circle highlighted a series of wire transfers, $10,000 here, $5,000 there, all sent to an account titled May's Boutique LLC. I turned my head slowly to look at the 300 guests. My parents were in the third row. My mother's hand was over her mouth, her knuckles white. Kenji's parents looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. I leaned into the microphone. The feedback shrieked through the vaulted ceiling, making everyone flinch. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. My voice was calm. It sounded like it belonged to a stranger. "This isn't the story of a wedding. This is the story of an eviction." I looked Kenji dead in the eye. I saw the moment his soul left his body. The moment he realized that the quiet, hard-working Hana he thought he could bleed dry was gone. But to understand how we got to this altar, to understand why I spent $80,000 on a wedding I knew would never end in a kiss, I have to take you back. Back to the beginning of the end. Back to the moment I realized that the two people I loved most in this world were treating my life like an open buffet. When I met him, he was a struggling freelance graphic designer with a credit score that looked like a room temperature. He was charming, though. He had that soft, "I just need someone to believe in me" energy that women like me, women who fix things, fall for every single time. I am a senior software architect. I deal in logic. I deal in structures. I saw Kenji as a project. I helped him polish his portfolio. I paid for his Adobe subscriptions. When he couldn't make rent on his dingy studio apartment, I let him move into my condo. "It's just until you get on your feet, babe," I told him. He stayed for 4 years. He eventually landed a decent job at a mid-sized agency, but the lifestyle creep was real. He needed the newest iPhone. He needed the designer sneakers. He needed to go to the trendy omakase spots where the bill for two was more than a car payment. And because I was making the big tech money, I didn't mind, or I told myself I didn't. I thought we were a team. I thought my success was our success. Then there was May, my little sister. There's a 7-year gap between us. In our family, I was the responsible one. The one who got the scholarship, the one who bought the house, the one who handled the funeral arrangements when our grandmother passed. May was the creative soul, which is family speak for unemployed and flighty. She dropped out of 3 different colleges. She started a jewelry line that failed. She tried to be an influencer but couldn't keep a schedule. My parents always looked at me and said, "Hana, you have so much. Please, help your sister. She's struggling." So when May lost her apartment, meaning she forgot to pay rent for 4 months, I did what the good sister does. I opened my doors. She can stay in the guest room, Kenji, I said. It'll be fun. Like a full house? Kenji had hesitated at first. He acted like he was worried about our privacy. Are you sure, Hana? It's a big change, he'd said, rubbing the back of his neck. I thought he was being protective of our relationship. I thought he was being a devoted fiancé. I didn't realize that his hesitation wasn't fear of her moving in. It was the fear that he wouldn't be able to hide his excitement. Within a month, the house felt different. The air was charged. I'd come home from a 12-hour shift at the lab, exhausted, my brain fried from debugging thousands of lines of code. I'd walk in and find them in the kitchen, laughing. They'd be drinking wine I bought. And the moment I entered the room, the laughter would stop. Not because they were guilty, not yet, but because I was the intruder. I was the boring one who worked too much. I was the one who reminded them that bills existed. Hey sis, you look tired, May would say, her eyes bright and mocking. Maybe you should take a day off. Kenji and I were just talking about how you're becoming a workaholic. Kenji would nod, putting a hand on her shoulder, just a friendly brotherly hand, I thought, and say, she's right, Hana, you need to relax. I didn't relax. I worked harder because the wedding was coming, a wedding that Kenji insisted be spectacular. You only do this once, Hana, he told me while we looked at venues. Don't you want to show everyone how far we've come? He didn't mean we. He meant him. He wanted to stand in a tuxedo in front of his old college friends and look like a king, and I, the fool, was happy to write the checks. I was building a ghost, a man who didn't exist, a life that was a facade, and the cracks were about to become canyons. The guest room was at the end of the hallway, but within weeks, May's presence had bled into every corner of my home. It started with small things, a silk robe draped over the back of the sofa, a specific brand of expensive organic almond milk in the fridge that only she drank, the smell of her heavy vanilla-based perfume lingering in the bathroom long after she'd left. I'm a woman of logic. I believe in data points. And the data points were starting to scream. I remember one Tuesday evening. I had finished a sprint at work early, a rarity. I wanted to surprise Kenji with his favorite takeout. When I unlocked the front door, the house was quiet, but the air felt thick. The TV was on, but the volume was muted. I walked into the living room and saw them. They weren't kissing. They weren't even touching. But they were sitting on the floor, side by side, looking at Kenji's laptop. Their shoulders were brushed together. The intimacy was so palpable, it felt like a physical wall I had to walk through. Oh, Hana, you're home early, May said. She didn't jump. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. Found a bug in the code, fixed it in 10 minutes, I said, setting the bags on the counter. What are you guys looking at? Kenji closed the laptop lid. Not fast enough to be suspicious, but with a deliberate, smooth motion. Just helping May with her business plan. She's thinking of opening an online boutique. I'm helping her with the branding. Branding takes a lot of time. May chirped, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Kenji is such a genius. You really don't appreciate his creative side enough, Hana. You're always talking about spreadsheets and Jira tickets. I felt a sharp sting in my chest. I had spent years defending Kenji's creative side to my parents, who thought he was a leech. Now, my own sister was using it as a weapon against me. As the weeks turned into months, the dynamic shifted. I became the bank and the landlord, while they became the residents. I would find them having deep conversations late at night on the balcony. When I joined them, the conversation would pivot to the wedding. We were just talking about the flowers, Kenji would say. May thinks lilies are too funeral-esque. She suggests peonies. Peonies are 3 times the price, Kenji, I'd remark. See? May would sigh, looking at Kenji. Always about the money. Don't you want your special day to be perfect, Hana? Or are you going to be an accountant at your own wedding? I felt like I was losing my mind. Every time I voiced a concern, they teamed up. It was a 2-on-1 match in my own home. I started staying at the office later, not because I had work, but because the silence of my cubicle was less lonely than the noise of my living room. Then came the disappearances. It started with my jewelry, a pair of diamond studs my grandmother left me. I went to put them on for a charity gala, and the velvet box was empty. May, have you seen my earrings? I asked. She didn't even look up from her phone. The ones with the tiny diamonds? I think I saw them under the dresser. Or maybe you lost them at work? You've been so stressed lately, Hana. You're forgetting everything. I searched under the dresser. Nothing. I mentioned it to Kenji. Babe, you probably misplaced them, he said, pulling me into a hug. He smelled like that vanilla perfume. Just a hint. You're working 60 hours a week. Your brain is fried. Maybe you should take some of that wedding fund and go to a spa. Relax a bit. Then, the money started moving. I checked our joint savings account to pay the deposit for the caterer. $5,000 was gone. The transaction was labeled investment transfer. Kenji, what is this? I showed him my phone screen during dinner. He didn't miss a beat. He took a sip of his wine. A $90 cat, we should be really better off. We won't take the time to disappear. We will learn why. Because at the time, all the trips are both man and woman far-from dreams. And a matter. I moved it to a high-yield sub-account. It's a strategy, Hana. We'll make an extra 4% by the time the wedding rolls around. Trust me, okay? You handle the code, that me handle the vision. But I'm the one who put that money there, I whispered. And there it is, Kenji said, slamming his fork down. The sound echoed in the dining room. The I make more than you card. Is that all I am to you, Hana? A charity case. If you don't trust me with our future, then why are we even doing this? He walked out. May followed him to calm him down. I sat there in the dark, eating lukewarm pasta, feeling like the smallest person in the world. I began to doubt my own eyes. I began to doubt my own memory. Maybe I was being a controlling, work-obsessed ice queen. Maybe I was the reason he was looking for warmth elsewhere. I started taking notes. Every time something felt off, I wrote it down in a hidden folder on my work laptop. October 14th. Kenji said he was at the gym. Gym bag is dry. Odometer on his car moved 40 miles. October 19th. May is wearing a new Chanel bag. She has no job. Claims it's a knockoff from a thrift store. October 22nd. Found a receipt for a hotel in Big Sur in the trash. Kenji said he was at a design retreat in the city. I was a coder. I was trained to look for patterns. And the pattern was clear. I was being erased from my own life. The breaking point happened on a Tuesday. I had told them I was flying to Seattle for a 2-day conference. In reality, the conference was remote, and I was staying at a Marriott 3 blocks away from my own house. I needed to know. I needed to see if I was crazy or if I was being hunted. I waited until 11 p.m. I used my backup key to enter through the garage, moving like a shadow. The house was quiet. I crept up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack a bone. I didn't go to our bedroom. I went to Kenji's home office. He kept a small fireproof safe in the closet. He thought I didn't know the code. But I had watched him enter it a dozen times through the reflection in the window. 0712, our anniversary, or so I thought. The safe clicked open. Inside weren't just documents. There was a small teal box from Tiffany & Co. My heart soared for a microsecond. A wedding gift? A surprise for the morning of? I opened it. It was a ring. Not a wedding band. An engagement ring. A massive pear-cut canary diamond that must have cost at least $30,000. There was a card tucked underneath it. For my real queen, only 3 more months of plain pretend. Then we take the rest of her money and start our life in London. Happy anniversary, Meters. Yours forever, K. Meters. May. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a heist. The investment transfers, the Mays Boutique LLC, the spectacular wedding. It wasn't a celebration of our love, it was a final payout. They wanted me to pay for the most expensive party of the year, and then they were going to vanish with the remains of my savings, leaving me with the debt and the humiliation. I didn't cry. The tears felt like they had turned to acid in my throat. I took a photo of the ring. I took a photo of the note. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I walked out of the house, back to the Marriott, and sat on the edge of the bed until the sun came up. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. Fixed It Hannah was dead. The architect was born. If they wanted a spectacular wedding, I was going to give them one they would never forget. The next morning, I called a private investigator, not a cheap one, a divorce specialist who usually worked for tech billionaires. I don't want a divorce, I told him over encrypted Zoom. I'm not married yet. I want a forensic audit of my own life. I want every penny tracked. I want every hotel stay documented. And I want it all ready by the date of my wedding. The PI, a man named Miller, was ruthless. Within a week, he sent me a folder. Kenji hadn't just been stealing from our joint account. He had opened 3 credit cards in my name, using my pre-approved mail offers that I never looked at. He had forged my signature on a personal loan. The total? Nearly $140,000. Most of it had gone to May. She wasn't starting a boutique. She was a gambling addict. She had been hitting the high-stakes rooms at the local casino, losing thousands of my hard-earned dollars in a single night. Kenji was her provider, the hero who kept her afloat by bleeding me dry. There's more, Miller said. Your sister? She's not just sleeping with your fiancé. She's been bragging about it on a private Discord server. She calls you the ATM. She says you're too stupid to notice because you're too busy staring at green text on a screen. He played a voice clip for me. May's voice. Honestly, I don't know how she's a genius. She pays for the steak, and we eat it. Kenji says the wedding is going to be hilarious. He's going to say I do just to get the legal access to her trust, and then we're out. I already have the flights booked for the day after the honeymoon starts. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. Miller, I said, I need you to do one more thing. I need you to find out who Kenji's biggest client is at the agency. And I need the contact info for May's probation officer from that misunderstanding she had 3 years ago that my parents paid to sweep under the rug. You're playing hardball, Miller noted. I'm an architect, I replied. When I find a structural flaw, I don't patch it. I demolish the building. For the next 2 months, I was the perfect bride. I smiled. I went to the dress fittings. I let May pick out the most expensive champagne for the toast. Oh, Hannah, this Krug is $300 a bottle. Are you sure? She'd ask, her eyes gleaming with greed. Nothing is too good for my sister, I'd say, patting her hand. Secretly, I was moving. I moved all my personal assets, my stocks, my 401k, my inheritance from my grandmother, into a protected offshore trust that Kenji couldn't touch even as a spouse. I gifted my condo to a holding company I owned, then drew up a lease agreement that required Kenji to pay market rate rent starting the day after the wedding. I also consolidated our debt. I took all those credit cards he opened and transferred the balances to a new account, an account where Kenji was the primary cardholder and I was just an authorized user. I used his forged signatures against him, confirming with the bank that he was responsible for the charges. I was building a cage, and he was walking into it with a smile on his face. The week before the wedding, Kenji was in a great mood. We did it, babe, he said, holding me on the balcony. The guest list is huge. All the big names from your company are coming. My parents are so proud. It's going to be a night to remember, I promised him. You know, he whispered, I'm really glad we stayed together. I know I was distant for a while, but I'm ready to be the husband you deserve. I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no love, just a deep clinical interest in how a human being could lie so effortlessly. I'm ready for you to get what's coming to you too, I said. He laughed, thinking I was being romantic. The night before the wedding, I stayed at a hotel, alone. I spent the evening with a video editor. We weren't making a montage. We were making a documentary. We synced the Nest Cam footage with the bank statements. We overlaid the audio clips of May laughing about the ATM. We added the photos of the Tiffany ring and the flight confirmations for their real honeymoon in London. Are you sure you want to do this, Miss Sato? The editor asked. He looked pale. This is scorched earth. I spent 5 years building his life, I said. It only takes 5 minutes to tear it down. I sent a series of scheduled emails. To Kenji's boss, a detailed report on how Kenji had been using company time and resources to run May's Boutique LLC. To my parents, a pre-wedding gift, a link to a private folder containing the PI's report. I wanted them to see it before the ceremony, but I knew they wouldn't check their email until it was too late. To the police, an anonymous tip regarding May's boutique and its connection to high-stakes illegal gambling rings. Everything was set. The bomb was wired. All I had to do was walk down the aisle and press the button. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. Blue skies, crisp air. May was in my suite, helping me with my hair. Her hands were on my head, the same hands that had been on my fiancé. "You look stunning, Hana," she whispered. "Kenji is a lucky man." "We're both lucky, May," I said, looking at her in the mirror. "We're finally going to be a family." The ceremony began. The music started, a string quartet playing a haunting version of Bridge Over Troubled Water. My father walked me down the aisle. He looked confused, his phone buzzing in his pocket. He hadn't seen the email yet. I reached the altar. Kenji took my hands. His were sweaty. The officiant began the usual speech: love, honor, cherish, blah, blah, blah. And now the officiant said, the couple has prepared a special visual tribute to their journey together. The lights dimmed. The 15-foot screen flickered to life. The first 30 seconds were normal. Photos of us at the beach. Photos of us at Christmas. The audience went all. Then the music cut out. The screen went black for 3 seconds. Then the Nest Cam footage started. High definition. Net vision. The sound of my living room filled the chapel. The sound of Kenji and May laughing as they drank my wine. Kenji's voice on screen. "She's so easy to play. She thinks I'm actually investing that money. She's too busy being a girl boss to notice I'm taking her for every cent she's worth." May's voice on screen. "I can't wait to see her face when she realizes her perfect sister is the one who took her man and her money. London is going to be so much fun on her dime." The chapel went dead silent. It was the car crash. Silence. I mentioned before. I let it play. I let it play for 5 full minutes. I let every guest see the bank transfers. I let them see the Tiffany ring. I let them see the photos of them at the hotel in Big Sur. I turned to Kenji. He wasn't even trying to speak. He was hyperventilating. I looked at May. She had collapsed into her seat, her face buried in her hands. I took off my engagement ring, the one I had paid for, and dropped it onto the marble floor. The clink sounded like a gunshot. "The wedding is canceled," I said into the microphone, "but the party isn't. There's an open bar and $40,000 worth of food. Enjoy it. Because Kenji and May are going to need every calorie they can get for the journey ahead." I walked back down the aisle. My father tried to grab my arm, but I brushed him off. My mother was wailing. I didn't look back. I didn't go to the reception. I went to the airport. I had a first-class ticket to Tokyo, a ticket I had bought months ago. While I was over the Pacific, the world I left behind exploded. Kenji was fired before he even left the chapel. His boss had seen the email and realized Kenji had been embezzling client funds to cover his boutique expenses. The banks frozen the accounts. Because of the way I had restructured the debt, Kenji was now legally responsible for $140,000 in high-interest loans. Since he had no job and no assets, his credit score evaporated overnight. May, the anonymous tip about the gambling worked. She wasn't arrested for the affair, of course, but the investigation into her boutique bank account revealed a trail of money laundering that she couldn't explain. She's currently serving 3 years of probation and living in my parents' basement, a basement that is now a prison, because my parents finally saw her for what she is. They stripped her of her allowance. She has to work at a grocery store to pay them back. As for me, I'm sitting in a penthouse in Roppongi. I took a high-level position at a Japanese tech firm. I sometimes get emails from Kenji, long, rambling apologies, claims that it was all May's idea, pleas for me to help him with the debt. I don't delete them. I archive them in a folder labeled Project Garbage. People ask me if I regret the $80,000 I spent on that wedding. I tell them no. It was the cheapest tuition I ever paid. I learned that you can't build a life on a rotten foundation, and I learned that there is no sound more beautiful than the sound of a parasite realizing its host has finally grown teeth. I'm Hana Sato. I am an architect, and my life is finally, perfectly, structurally sound.